The 62nd Madaraka Day celebrations in Homa Bay County presented a stark contradiction that exposes the complex dynamics of modern Kenyan politics. While the government celebrated what appeared to be overwhelming public support in a traditionally opposition stronghold, the violent assault on journalists covering the event revealed a troubling undercurrent that challenges the narrative of unanimous acceptance. The most disturbing aspect of the Homa Bay Madaraka Day celebrations was the systematic assault on members of the Fourth Estate. At least 6 journalists from major media houses were injured by security officers, despite carrying proper media accreditation. Among those attacked were Steve Okedi, a KTN TV producer, Mabel Acheng from NTV, Ephantus Maina from Royal Media Services, and George Odiwar from Nation Media Group. The irony was palpable. As the country celebrated its democratic achievements and self-governance, journalists, the guardians of democracy, were being brutalized for attempting to document the very event meant to showcase Kenya's democratic progress. The injured reporters required emergency treatment from Red Cross teams stationed at the venue, a medical intervention that should never have been necessary at a national celebration. The Media Council of Kenya's swift condemnation of these attacks underscores the gravity of the situation. When media professionals cannot safely perform their constitutional duty to inform the public, it raises serious questions about the state of press freedom and democratic space in Kenya. The fact that these attacks occurred despite valid accreditation suggests either a breakdown in security coordination or, more troublingly, a deliberate attempt to control the narrative by silencing independent observers. In stark contrast to the violence against journalists was the apparent enthusiasm of residents who began arriving at Raila Odinga Stadium as early as midnight, braving the cold to secure positions for the morning celebration. This overnight vigil created compelling visuals of packed stadiums and enthusiastic crowds that dominate the official narrative of the event. The sight of thousands of residents camping overnight at the stadium presents an interesting political dynamic. Homa Bay County, long considered an opposition stronghold and the political heartland of former Prime Minister Raila Odinga, appeared to have embraced President William Ruto with unprecedented enthusiasm. The stadium bore Odinga's name, yet it was filled with citizens apparently eager to welcome his political rival. However, the enthusiasm raises questions that deserve scrutiny. While genuine political realignments do occur, the sudden and overwhelming nature of this apparent shift in a traditionally opposition area warrants closer examination, especially given unconfirmed reports circulating about financial incentives for attendance. Perhaps the most contentious aspect of the Homa Bay celebrations revolves around unverified allegations that residents were financially incentivized to attend the function. While these reports remain unconfirmed, they reflect a broader concern about the authenticity of political support in contemporary Kenya. The practice of paying citizens to attend political events is not unique to any particular party or leader, but it fundamentally undermines the democratic principle of voluntary political participation. When attendance becomes transactional rather than voluntary, it corrupts the very essence of civic engagement and makes it impossible to gauge genuine public sentiment. If these allegations prove true, they would cast the overnight vigils and packed stadium in an entirely different light. What appeared as political enthusiasm would instead represent economic desperation, with citizens trading their time and presence for much-needed income in challenging economic times. The events in Homa Bay reflect deeper tensions in Kenya's democratic evolution. On one hand, the country continues to hold regular elections and peaceful transitions of power, demonstrating institutional resilience. On the other hand, the assault on journalists and allegations of paid attendance suggest that democratic norms are under strain. The contradiction between celebrating self-governance while suppressing those who document governance is particularly striking. Democracy requires not just the mechanics of elections and ceremonies, but also the protection of spaces for independent scrutiny and criticism. When security forces target journalists at national celebrations, it sends a chilling message about the price of holding power accountable. Furthermore, the potential use of financial incentives to manufacture political support represents a form of soft coercion that undermines democratic choice. Citizens should attend political events because they support the leaders or policies being promoted, not because economic circumstances force them to exchange their presence for payment. The Homa Bay Madaraka Day celebrations leave several critical questions unanswered. First, who authorized or ordered the assault on journalists, and what consequences will they face? The Media Council's condemnation is important, but accountability requires more than statements of disapproval. Second, what investigations will be conducted into the allegations of paid attendance? While these reports remain unconfirmed, their persistence suggests they deserve serious examination by relevant authorities and civil society organizations. Third, how can Kenya ensure that national celebrations truly reflect the democratic values they purport to celebrate, when the very act of documenting these celebrations becomes dangerous for journalists? The celebrations themselves become hollow performances rather than genuine democratic expressions. Kenya's democracy is at a crossroads. The country can choose to address these troubling incidents with the seriousness they deserve, or it can allow them to become normalized aspects of political life. The choice will determine whether Madaraka Day continues to represent genuine self-governance or merely becomes an annual theater of manufactured consensus. The assault on journalists in Homa Bay cannot be dismissed as an isolated incident or the result of overzealous security officers. It represents a systematic problem that requires systematic solutions, including clear protocols for media access, accountability for security personnel, and protection for journalists performing their constitutional duties. Similarly, the allegations of paid attendance, whether proven or not, highlight the need for greater transparency in how political events are organized and funded. Citizens deserve to know whether their fellow attendees are there by choice or by economic necessity. The true measure of Kenya's democratic maturity will not be found in the pageantry of national celebrations, but in how the country responds to these challenges. Democracy is not a destination, but a continuous journey, and that journey requires constant vigilance to protect the institutions and freedoms that make self-governance possible. As Kenya moves forward from the 62nd Madaraka Day celebrations, the country must confront the uncomfortable truth that democratic progress cannot be measured solely by the size of crowds or the grandeur of ceremonies. It must be measured by the protection of fundamental freedoms, the accountability of those in power, and the genuine participation of citizens in the democratic process. The events in Homa Bay serve as a reminder that democracy requires more than elections and celebrations. It requires a commitment to the values that make those elections and celebrations meaningful: press freedom, voluntary participation, and the right to hold power accountable. Only by upholding these principles can Kenya ensure that future Madaraka Day celebrations truly represent the democratic ideals they claim to honor.